As Peruvians continue to await the official announcement of Pedro Castillo as the next president, the country's top authorities have called for calm and to respect the results. The presidents of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the United States, Joe Biden, ended their first summit. Both described the meeting as positive, so much so that their respective ambassadors will return to their duties in Washington and Moscow. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has joined the many forces calling for a huge turnout in Friday's presidential elections. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Peru's National Office of Electoral Processes has finally concluded the count of ballots cast in the presidential runoff of June 6, as Peruvians continue to await the official announcement of Pedro Castillo as the winner. According to the results published on the Electoral Authority's website, the candidate for the Free Peru Party, who's maintained the lead throughout the count process, secured 50.12% of the vote. Meanwhile, far-right candidate Keiko Fujimori of the Popular Force Party, who's continued to make claims of fraud, secured 49.87% of the ballots. This represents a difference of just over 44,000 votes between the two candidates in one of the tightest presidential races in Peru's history. As supporters of presidential candidate Pedro Castillo continue to mobilise in the streets, urging the Electoral Authority to declare him the winner, the country's Council of State issued a statement this Wednesday calling for respect for Peru's institutions. The text, signed by Interim President Francisco Sagasti, as well as the heads of the legislative and judicial branches, the Attorney General, Ombudsman and other top authorities, also reiterates that elections are the only means to come to power in Peru's constitutional democracy, while calling for calm and to respect the results. Nearly 12,000 workers of Brazil's electric company, Electrobras, are on strike as the Brazilian Senate debates this Wednesday the privatization of one of the top energy companies in Latin America. Unions stress that the privatization of the state electric energy company will only benefit the privileged sectors that support the current government, especially bankers and speculators, and will be another blow to the Brazilian population as rates will rise. Meanwhile, several senators and experts also expressed their concern and rejection of the privatisation plan, which they note constitutes a loss of sovereignty in the energy sector. In Mexico, authorities announced the identification of the remains of Rouhani Guerrero, one of the 43 Ayotzinapa student teachers who disappeared in 2014. The remains were found in a spot called Barranca de la Carniceria, or Butcher's Canyon. Rouhani Guerrero is the third victim identified since 2014 and the second of 6 samples of remains sent to the forensic experts at the University of Innsbruck in Austria. The group of 43 student teachers from Ayotzinapa were intercepted by security forces the night of September 26th to 27th while travelling by bus and murdered. The case was from the outset surrounded by denial and false investigative leads. President López Obrador vowed to find the culprits on his first day in office. He announced on September 26, 2020, the arrest of 80 people linked to the case, including members of criminal groups, police officers, and agents of the Public Prosecutor's Office.
The next few days I will be traveling again to Innsbruck, Austria, with the purpose of delivering new bone remains for their analysis and collecting the remnants so I can immediately inform the families of any of these 2 cases that we are notifying as positive have any possibility of having a remnant.
Structural failure caused the collapse of a Mexico City metro overpass that left 26 people dead, according to an initial investigation by independent experts published on Wednesday. Norwegian engineering company DNV released a report that identified a number of deficiencies in the construction process linked to the May 3rd disaster. They include problems with the welding, insufficient bolts, and the use of different types of concrete. Dozens were injured when a section of elevated track collapsed and a train came crashing down. The metro line involved in the tragedy has been plagued by problems since it was inaugurated in 2012. The disaster has prompted accusations of negligence and demands for justice from devastated relatives. And we stay in Mexico, where a train derailed in the state of Jalisco on Tuesday, leaving 1 person dead and 3 injured. The rescue team is going through the rubble and trying to clear it out of the way. Part of the train ended up near and over some of the houses alongside the tracks, while the other wagons affected the borderline farms. The train carrying 108 wagons of canola seed belongs to Ferromex, a private company which took over the state rail network in 1998 as part of the privatisation policies that are now being reversed. Ferromex will lead an inquiry into the causes of the accident. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Bolivia, the leader of the political opposition, Carlos Mesa, and 31 others mentioned by former de facto President Jeanine Áñez during the investigations into the November 2019 coup will be summoned to testify before prosecutors. More in the following report.
According to the State Attorney General's office, there are 32 people whom former de facto President Jeanine Áñez mentioned in her first statements regarding the coup d'etat of November 2019.
She has named 32 people in this statement. Among this group of 32 people, the most striking are her references to Mr. Carlos Mesa, Mr. Fernando Camacho, Herges Justiniano, and other individuals.
The movement towards socialism, through its parliamentary group, reiterated its rejection of the allegations of right-wing sectors that attribute alleged political persecution to these and other investigations into the de facto government.
The opposition talks about persecution whenever there is any investigation in Bolivia. What the opposition would like is the FBI to come and investigate, and that won't be seen as persecution. That the Justice Department investigate, surely that is what the opposition wants. Here there is no persecution of anyone.
Meanwhile, the national government announced that it does not intend to use preventive detention orders against any of those invited to testify as witnesses.
We invite Mr. Mesa and we give him all the guarantees for his testimony to be comprehensive, like the one offered by former President Áñez. He has to explain to the country what has happened, and this procedure has no purpose to detain him preventively or to originate a situation against his freedom. What we want is for him to tell the truth to the Bolivian people.
In her statements, former de facto President Jeanine Áñez said that Carlos Mesa opposed that the constitutional succession that would follow the forced resignation of President Evo Morales should correspond to Senator Adriana Salvatierra from the MAS party, then President of the Upper House. The Civic Community Coalition declared an emergency in rejection of the prosecutor's subpoena for its leader to testify this Thursday.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
The first face-to-face meeting between the presidents of Russia and the United States ended in Geneva with an agreement to start negotiations on nuclear arms and cybersecurity. Both heads of state described the meeting as positive, so much so that their respective ambassadors will return to their duties in Washington and Moscow. The summit lasted some 5 hours. Putin stressed at a press conference afterwards that both nuclear superpowers understand their responsibility in maintaining strategic stability and will negotiate a renewal of the SALT Treaty to keep strategic atomic weapons under control. He said special emphasis was put on curbing cyber attacks, especially the use of ransomware to hold states, public services and companies hostage. On Ukraine, another contentious issue, both countries agreed that a solution to the conflict in the Donbass area must be based on the Minsk Agreement of 2015, which includes the interests of the Russian-speaking self-proclaimed republics.
On many points, our assessment differ, but from my point of view, both sides show a desire to understand each other and look for ways to converge positions. The conversation was absolutely constructive.
And I must tell you, the tone of the entire meetings, I guess it was a total of 4 hours, was good, positive. There wasn't any strident action taken.
Around 1,000 demonstrators gathered in Hungary's capital on Wednesday, urging President János Áder to strike down a new law that human rights groups say stigmatizes LGBT people and limits their rights. The demonstration took place outside Arda's official residence and came a day after Hungary's parliament approved controversial legislation, which was supposedly aimed at fighting paedophilia, but included amendments that prohibit the display or promotion of homosexuality or gender reassignment to minors. In practice, the new law prohibits the portrayal of homosexuality in school sex education programs, films, advertisements, and other media materials aimed at under 18s. Three Chinese astronauts will be launched into space within 24 hours. Their mission is the construction of China's space station Tiangong, or Heavenly Palace. This is the first manned space mission to be carried out during the construction of China's space station. It has multiple tasks, including technology verification in areas such as astronauts' extended stay in orbit, resupply of space supplies, extravehicular activities and operations, and in-orbit maintenance. In the past 7 months, Chinese scientists have already successfully landed exploratory rovers on the Moon in December and on Mars in May. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani joined the many voices calling for a huge turnout in Friday's presidential elections to protect the Islamic Republic. 5 candidates are contesting the polls, 4 of them belonging to the camp of so-called principalists close to the religious leader Ayatollah Khamenei.
Of expressing our complaints is not turning our back on ballot boxes. That's not the solution. We have better ways. I tell our people that turning away from the ballot boxes does not resolve anything for us. Some may say that the situation has become so tough for us. I tell them to cast their votes despite the troubles. Going to the polling stations in present circumstances will consolidate your system and makes us more powerful. Not voting does not do us any good. What is the benefit in that? Speaking of our upcoming elections on Friday, it's been several months that American and British media and the mercenaries working under their flags in those media are killing themselves to maybe question the elections and weaken the participation of the people. They want to somehow make accusations against the elections in the Islamic Republic with all sorts of comments and remarks.
The Lebanese army is in desperate need of financial assistance, General Joseph Aoun said Wednesday ahead of a United Nations-backed fundraising conference for the crisis-stricken Middle East country. The conference will be hosted by France on Thursday. Lebanon's economic crisis is the worst since the 18th century, hitting not only the army but the entire Lebanese population. Protests erupted in August 2020 after a gigantic blast at Beirut's port installations that killed 700 people. Ever since, the government has been acting on an interim basis.
Resort to asking friendly countries for aid, but I'll go to the end of the world to get aid so that the army remains standing on its feet. In 2 days, we have an international conference under the auspices of France and the United Nations. This international conference is specifically designed to support the Lebanese army and European countries. America, Canada, Arab countries and Turkey will participate with the sole aim of supporting the Lebanese army.
India's most visited tourist venue, the Taj Mahal, reopened on Wednesday as Indian authorities loosened restrictions following an easing in the country's devastating recent coronavirus surge. Infections and deaths soared to record levels in April and May, overwhelming health services in some places and prompting lockdowns and other curbs. Cases have declined in recent weeks, with several major cities including New Delhi and Mumbai easing many restrictions. In Agra, where the Taj Mahal is located, tourist guides and shopkeepers were upbeat as India's top tourist attraction reopened. However, the reopening prompted fears of a new surge in cases as markets and shopping malls were crowded in the capital. As of Wednesday, India reports over 29 million COVID-19 cases and about 380,000 deaths due to the pandemic, ranking second worldwide.
I'm very happy because after the lockdown, this is my first opportunity to step out my house. Yes, the way suddenly everything is through open to everyone. and a little afraid of what may happen, but we should remember that our safety is on our hands and we should limit how much we go out. But yes, I'm still afraid a little to step out.
As of Thursday, the French will not be forced to wear protective masks against COVID-19, the Prime Minister Jean Castex announced on Wednesday. The curfew will also be lifted 10 days ahead of the previous plan.
Lift the general obligation to wear a mask outdoors. The High Council of Public Health sent us yesterday an opinion on the wearing of masks outdoors, and we will draw the consequences without delay. Wearing a mask outdoors will therefore no longer be compulsory, except in certain circumstances, when people gather together, when they are in crowded places, in a queue, on a market, or in the stands of a stadium. The prefectural decrees governing the wearing of masks outdoors will be modified tomorrow to reflect this new rule of good sense in the light of the evolution of the epidemic situation.
Moscow has become the first city in the world to make vaccination against coronavirus compulsory, not just for healthcare workers, but for employees in a range of public-facing industries, including catering, transport and museums. The order was published by officials in the Russian capital, citing concerns over the worsening local epidemiological situation. The city's top health authority, Elena Andreeva, warned that there's an increase in the number of people who actively visit public places and use mass transit systems while infected. As a result, 60% of workers in selected businesses and organisations will be required to be immunised. Sectors singled out include transport, the food and beverage businesses, banks, as well as those working in beauty salons, theatres, museums, fitness clubs, spas and massage parlours. According to the Brazilian Ministry of Health, 41 positive tests for COVID-19 were registered in the first 24 hours among teams and service providers at the Copa America football tournament currently taking place in the country. Since then, since the hosting of the competition was announced 2 weeks ago, it's been criticised by scientists and experts who've warned of the serious health situation in Brazil. More details in the following report by our correspondents Andre Vieira and Sebastian Soto.
After Colombia and Argentina rejected hosting the Copa America football tournament, Brazil, the nation where the most people have died from COVID-19 this year, decided to host it at the last minute.
I cannot think of a worse time to hold the Copa America, with matches of such importance here in Brazil at this time, especially given the health situation we are experiencing and also because of the symbolic aspect.
Due to health issues, 3 motions submitted to the Supreme Court sought to prevent the holding of the Copa America in Brazil. All were rejected by the judges. The Senate committee investigating the failings of Jair Bolsonaro's government during the pandemic was also alerted.
I wanted to share a word with you. I don't agree with holding the Copa America in Brazil.
We know that there are threats, both from foreign strains and from strains originating within our own territory.
We don't want a cup, we want a vaccine. That's what these citizens are asking for in a country where only 11% of the population is fully vaccinated. Brazil has a daily average of 2,000 deaths, and the number of dead and infected people has been increasing over the last week.
Today, Brazil puts the world at risk due to this event because we are already a source of new strains of the virus, strains that are originating here due to the lack of vaccination policy, which could put the whole world at risk.
In a country that is in mourning, the legacy of a cup that has just begun may be nothing more than profit.
Football, because of the impact it has, especially here in South and Latin America, should be an instrument for promotion, to promote vaccine, to campaign for hand-washing measures, hygiene, isolation, but we end up not seeing any of that. We only see the concern about holding the games, about the contract with the sponsors, and it's evident that there is no commitment to promote measures to control the pandemic.
Hundreds of cities will mobilize once again for vaccines, food, and against President Jair Bolsonaro on June 19th.
André Vieira e Sebastião Soto, teleSUR, Brasil.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. Plus, you can catch up on our shows on our YouTube channel. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.